Hey, it's your old pal Lucid Stu again, and we're back in California looking at the concept of running high-speed rail from Los Angeles to San Diego, this time along the coastal route. A lot of people have said that California high-speed rail should have started with LA to San Diego, and a lot have said the inland route is a bad idea, so let's crunch some numbers, create some visuals, and we'll see. Let's do a quick overview of the area. On the north end, Los Angeles is the largest metro in California and second largest in the United States with a population of 13 million. There is also the concept of Greater Los Angeles, which is basically Southern California minus San Diego, and that has a population of 18 million, but we'll come back to that in a second. 115 miles to the south is the San Diego Metro, which has a population of 3.3 million, making it the fourth largest in California and 18th largest in the country. Back to Greater Los Angeles, part of that is the Inland Empire metro area, home to 4.5 million people, and with a coastal route, a high-speed rail train would skip that population, which is 30% larger than the San Diego area, so keep that in mind in the final analysis. With that said, we will start in Los Angeles at LA Union Station on the northeast side of downtown. This is one of the largest transit hubs in the region with connections to subway, light rail, regional rail, and bus services. LA Union is set to receive an upgrade sometime in the future to welcome high-speed rail. That will include amenities such as a new concourse and raised platforms to allow through operations over the 101 freeway as seen here. The path out of LA Union is a little tortured, and then it joins a portion of the LOSSAN Corridor owned by the LA County MTA along the LA River. California high-speed rail has nearly finished the environmental review on LA to Anaheim, and unfortunately they're going to choose a blended option that won't be much different from commuter rail beyond electrification. They did consider other options. I'm picking one of the rejected options, which will cut around 20 minutes in exchange for $9 billion. Saving that 20 minutes for that cost makes a lot more sense if extending all the way to San Diego. The fastest option, saving 5 more minutes in exchange for 12 billion more, doesn't seem like a good deal regardless. Back to our route, 2 miles south of LA Union, the first tunnel would enter the ground just north of where BNSF and UP tracks meet at Redondo Junction. This option is called the UPRR option because it would travel within Union Pacific right-of-way for a good portion. The purpose of the first tunnel is to bridge the 5-mile gap between Redondo Junction and the UP industrial lead that runs from Southgate to Anaheim. That would emerge from the ground in Cudahy, 8 miles from LA Union, and then proceed over the Los Angeles River, over Interstate 710, over the Rio Hondo, and then over several intersections on elevated track. Speed in this area would be about 150 miles per hour. The portion of the UP right-of-way next to Interstate 5 here is wide enough in most places for 6 tracks. With some modification, a train could run at 220 miles per hour for several miles at ground level. The crossing of existing streets would be handled a variety of different ways due to the complex mix of transportation infrastructure. In Anaheim, just north of the Disney resorts, the line would go underground, routed under Interstate 5 for a short distance. One possibility here would be a dedicated Disney station under Interstate 5. However, that would be only 2 miles from Anaheim's Arctic station, which is the intended Anaheim stop. After curving out of the Interstate 5 right-of-way and under a power corridor, the line would then emerge from the ground near Arctic Station. This is our first stop, which is near major venues like Anaheim Stadium. Surrounding parking for that could eventually be repurposed into a sort of instant downtown area. There are already about a dozen sizable 5/1 style apartment blocks, So you have about 5,000 people living down there inside of a square mile, which is pretty dense for Southern California, especially considering half the area is surface parking right now. As far as transit connections go, a high-speed train would hook up with Metrolink for local train service, as well as OCTA for local bus, and a shuttle bus that connects to the Disney resorts. With a population of 330,000, Anaheim is one of the larger cities in California, but it's considered part of the LA Metro. On travel time, I'm going to defer to the 25 minutes that the California High-Speed Rail Authority got in studying the subject. However, my calculations showed between 18 and 22 minutes instead of 25, depending on if speed were capped. They also got the distance wrong. It's not 33 miles, it's 29 miles. While 25 minutes is leagues better than the 46 minutes that California High-Speed Rail is actually planning, it is oddly slow for the given route. The reason we can't go with the option the California High-Speed Rail Authority is picking is that it doesn't have enough throughput. The 46-minute route assumes truncated service terminating at Anaheim. We want full service all the way to San Diego. Speaking of that, let's continue on to the south from Anaheim. A theme of this video is going to be the unsuitability of existing routing and tunnels being the only viable high-speed bypasses. No exception here as we go back underground to avoid complications in the Santa Ana area. Since we've mentioned Disney and Santa Ana and this video will focus on an express trip, let's briefly discuss regional service options. Passing directly under Santa Ana Regional Transportation Center would afford a stop there. Many other options are also possible, including service at stations that already exist. Back to the route, we will conform to existing right-of-way for a little bit in southern Orange County. The right-of-way there is mostly capable of 125 miles per hour with some adjustments. As part of that, our third tunnel would be about 6 miles long and come back to ground level in Tustin. Beyond that, things are pretty straight for 8 miles into Lake Forest before having to slow a little for curves where the route starts turning south. Approaching San Juan Capistrano, we will pass through the Mission Viejo station. Stations on the existing line are mostly 2 tracks. This could be improved to 3 without too much difficulty. Distances between stations are also in the 8 to 10 mile range, so passing sidings between stations may be adequate to accommodate the extra local and freight traffic. This LOSSAN Corridor is government owned, so it is assumed electrification will be easier. At Capistrano, we'll need to go back underground. This is complicated somewhat by reserved open space and needing to cross under Trabuco Creek. South of that, any such tunneling would need to be sensitive to the historic nature of the core of San Juan Capistrano, which is famous for its Spanish mission area where the swallows perennially return to nest. Once underground, our tunnel would head straight for Interstate 5 in San Clemente. San Clemente is one of 2 areas where the current surfline is quite close to the ocean. This route is endangered by continuing coastal erosion and sea level rise. Most areas of coastal Southern California are built up to the point that above-ground alternative routing is no longer available. As such, there is no real alternative to a long tunnel here. I have this one partially following Interstate 5 and at about 10 miles long. That would emerge on the south side of San Clemente at San Mateo Creek. A freeway project down here was killed not too long ago because people didn't want a giant intersection in the area, so it would be important to be sensitive to locals and the environment here. I am crossing the canyon on viaduct even though the interstate is mainly on earthworks. To maintain speed, I have a second tunnel into San Onofre Canyon, but a slower alignment along the freeway is possible. At this point, the route enters Camp Pendleton, which is a sizable Marine Corps base that serves to geographically separate the coastal areas of Los Angeles and San Diego. That consumes 15 miles of the coast, which is the only remaining undeveloped portion of the coast between San Diego and Malibu. These factors allow some routing freedom and a chance to get up to top speed for most of that distance. That situation ends coming into Oceanside, which is our last stop before reaching San Diego. I chose Oceanside because it's 40 miles from San Diego and at the far north end of San Diego County. Speed through the area would be 110 miles per hour or less due to some at-grade crossings that aren't worth eliminating, which makes a stop less impactful on overall time. Oceanside has a population of 170,000, and as you can see, there is a trend of some density around the station. In terms of transit, Oceanside is served by the North County Transit District, which provides bus service, commuter rail to San Diego via the coaster, and also a connection to nearby Escondido on the Sprinter. Metrolink from the north also stops here. It is 54 miles from Anaheim to Oceanside. I have that taking 26 minutes for a respectable average of 124 miles per hour. Continuing on to the south from Oceanside, our slower speed situation is perpetuated as we attempt to move through Carlsbad. Carlsbad also has some at-grade crossings which would be difficult to remove, similar to Oceanside. However, the station there also only has one track running through it. Not a huge deal, as the existing eastern platform sits in the path of a second track and could be removed, allowing trains to move through Carlsbad at 110 miles per hour simultaneously in both directions. South of Carlsbad, the grade separation situation does improve. A few crossings remain, but most of the right-of-way is already separated on the 8 miles between Carlsbad and Encinitas. Encinitas is similar to Carlsbad and Oceanside in that the geometry of the right-of-way will keep things on the slow side, so grade separating isn't really worth it outside of safety. South of Encinitas is Del Mar. That is an area where the surf line is in a precarious position on ocean bluffs that are steadily being eaten away by the Mar. In this area in particular, the existing right-of-way doesn't have the longest shelf life. The alternative is a tunnel, which associated local governments are currently working on. I will assume one of the advanced alternatives as our routing, since it's close to what I was thinking anyway. Here, passing the Del Mar Raceway will just squeeze under Jimmy Durante Boulevard before roughly following Camino Del Mar through the Del Mar area. That would emerge under Carmel Valley Road just before rejoining the existing right-of-way to cross the Los Penasquitos Lagoon and up the canyon toward Miramar. After 3 miles, that canyon starts to get rough. The existing line runs pretty slow through canyons for 7 miles. We'll use a tunnel as a cutoff and save about 10 minutes. That tunnel would go under the University of California, San Diego in order to transition to the next canyon south. The San Diego area is a series of mesas and steep canyons that makes running transportation infrastructure a major challenge unless it runs through the canyons. So predictably, many canyons are already used by existing infrastructure, which further complicates the issue. Once out of the 3-mile tunnel under UCSD, our route will rejoin existing rail right-of-way about 10 miles north of downtown San Diego. We will follow that the rest of the way. Though not very fast, alternatives like Interstate 5 are marginally better on speed, but quite a bit more expensive. In the San Diego area, the California High-Speed Rail Authority indicates a preference toward a station in the area of San Diego International Airport. Such a potential station site is highlighted in green. However, being that San Diego's Santa Fe Depot is only a mile farther south, we will continue to that. This would duplicate some existing local transit, and San Diego has some of the best local transit in the country for a city of its size, but I think it's worth getting to downtown due to its density. The depot is directly served by 2 light rail lines as well as bus service, with a 3rd light rail line only 4 blocks east. We have made it to sunny San Diego. Let's talk travel times. Oceanside to San Diego is 37 miles. I have that taking 25 minutes for an average of 89 miles per hour. Los Angeles to San Diego depends on our LA Anaheim routing. Let's start with the fast option. 124 miles, that would take an hour and 20 minutes, which would meet the 80-minute LA to San Diego requirement in State Proposition 1A that defined California high-speed rail, even with the 2 stops. That's an overall average of 93 miles per hour. A non-stop would be about 10 minutes faster. The slower version with the LA Anaheim section that the California High-Speed Rail Authority is actually going with would be an hour and 41 minutes. It's also worth noting that Amtrak currently makes the trip in just under 3 hours. For comparison, let's refer to my previous LA to San Diego video that followed the inland route. As a local with 4 intermediate stops, that was an hour and 40 minutes. As a non-stop Super Express, that was an hour and 2 minutes. Same basic ballpark. That brings up the cost. Is that in the same ballpark? First, a quick review of my cost estimation algorithm and some sample results to show it can come up with reasonable figures compared to real project estimates. For the faster version of this 124-mile coastal route between LA and San Diego, I have a cost of $40.4 billion. That is a hefty $325 million per mile, but only slightly more per mile than the rest of California high-speed rail as it stands. Our cheaper 21-minute slower option would cut $9.4 billion off that for $250 million per mile, which is what California high-speed rail is running at currently. That would be slightly cheaper than the current price tag for the planned Merced to Bakersfield initial operating segment. Our inland estimate was $36.8 billion. Whatever the cost, it's not likely to be cheap, but $31 billion is close to the funding that the California High-Speed Rail Authority has identified for the initial operating segment. In terms of population served, let us reiterate that a coastal route would bypass the 4.5 million residents of the Inland Empire. However, it's arguable that a coastal route has better potential for building density given the likely locations of stations on both routes. So what do you think? Is this the way California high-speed rail should have started instead of the Central Valley? Would it be worth the cost, and is the coastal route worth it if it means bypassing the Inland Empire? Let me know in the comments. Plenty more videos on their way, but that's all for now. Until next time, I'll see you on that big beautiful freeway.